Welcome back to First Christian Church and our Sunday school lesson this morning. We've got our trusty mascot here, Miss Clementine. I think she's a little tired this morning, but she's really excited about wanting to start the book of Exodus, which is our second book of the Bible. And we have already just finished Genesis. Remember the story of Joseph, and he was second in command in Egypt, and then his family had moved down to Egypt. And then about 400 years go by, and the book of Exodus starts up. And of course, the book of Exodus is on page, let me sit you down, Miss Clementine. It's on page 64 of the Green Bible here, if you've got the Green Bible. It'll be pretty close to that in whatever Bible you have. So you may look that up, and a lot of great stories in the book of Exodus. And so we pick it up that a lot of Israelites have left Canaan because of the famine and went to move to Egypt, where the River Nile provided a lot of food for families, and and the people that came from that were become known as Israelites because they were from the family of Israel. And a lot of people also called them Hebrews. And they also got to be known as the Hyksos. So those are all three words that refer to the same people who ultimately will be known as Jewish people. And so, 400 years pass, they're still in Egypt. And it turns out Pharaoh, who is the king of Egypt at that time, starts to realize that the Israelites are really starting to become a numerous people, and they become concerned that they might overthrow the Egyptians. So they start to enslave them and be rough with them, and ultimately they become the slaves of the Egyptians, and they start building a lot of the buildings that you even see today in Egypt. Pyramid building was very important even before this time, and other type of monuments. And so, as it turns out, despite them being enslaved, the Israelites started really even multiplying even more. And Pharaoh told the nurses that were attending the pregnant women of the Israelites that if a baby's born, we want you to kill it. If it's a boy, if it's a girl, you can let it live, because we need to reduce their numbers. And of course, the midwives, that's what they were called, the nurses were called midwives, were they feared God, and they did not want to kill these babies, so they didn't. And they loved on the families of the Israel despite Pharaoh's order, and they treated the children kindly. And then Pharaoh found out about that and called the midwives to his court and said, "Why have you let these boys live?" And they just said, "Oh, I don't know. The Israeli women, they're tougher, and they have their babies before we even get there, and they're gone. So there's nothing we can do." So Pharaoh got really upset, and he ordered all the boys, young boys of the Israelis, to be thrown into the River Nile and to be killed, because he wanted to reduce their numbers down. Well, about this time, there was a young woman who was pregnant and gave birth to a little boy, and she hid him for 3 months. She did not want him to be killed, but it got to the point where she couldn't hide him anymore. And so she made a little basket of reed and put a little pitch on it so it would not sink. And she put this little boy in this basket and into the Nile River and floated it down the Nile River, hoping that maybe somebody would find it and want to keep it. Well, as it turns out, as it floated, the boy's older sister decided to walk down the river and watch. And she saw the little basket with the baby in it float down, and it just so happened that Pharaoh's daughter was taking a bath in the Nile at that time. And she could hear the baby crying and found the basket. And of course, she wanted to take care of it and nurture it. And she noticed it was a young boy and that it needed to nurse and get milk. And so she told her servants, go find a woman in Hebrew who could nurse this baby. Well, as it turns out that they picked the little boy's mother, not knowing that it was the boy's mother, to do the nursing. So she got to nurse her young son. I suspect God was in that. Anyway, time passes, and the boy grows up, and the Pharaoh's daughter names that boy Moses because she drew him out of the water. That's what Moses means. And so Moses grows up, and he watches the Egyptians, you know, treat the Hebrews very harshly and pretty rough. And he knew he was Hebrew deep down. And one day he saw one of the taskmasters for the Egyptians was just beating on a Hebrew really hard, just really torturing him. Well, it made Moses so mad that he took the taskmaster and he ended up killing him. And so the next day, as it turns out, two Hebrew men were kind of arguing with one another and fighting. And Moses is like, why are you doing that? Don't fight among yourselves. And they looked at him and said, what, are you going to kill us like you did that Egyptian taskmaster? So that's when Moses knew he was in a little trouble and needed to leave. And so he did. He left Egypt and went over to the land of Midian, which is on the other side of the Red Sea. He was scared that Pharaoh would end up killing him. And so he took off, went to Midian, and of course Pharaoh never thought he would see Moses again, and we'll find out that that would not be correct. As it turns out, when Moses got over to the land of Midian, which is now the Sinai Peninsula, it's what we refer to it in modern day, Moses found a well of water so he could drink, and it turned out that there was a priest of Midian, and he had 7 daughters, and they would come to this well to get water. Well, this particular day Moses was there for the first time. He saw the 7 daughters come out, and the shepherds, the local shepherds, were giving them a hard time, not wanting them to take the water from the well. They didn't want to share. Well, Moses didn't think too much of that, and he intervened and told those shepherds they better back off and let these women have access to the water, which they did, and got the water, and they went back and told their dad, the priest, all that had happened. Well, the priest was very impressed, and he invited Moses into his home. And it turned out Moses stayed and ended up marrying one of the daughters. Zipporah is her name, and she became his wife. Back in Egypt, though, as we kind of changed the scene there, the Israelites were still enslaved, and they were miserable, and they cried out to the Lord, please save us, Lord, please save us. And the Lord heard their cry. And next week, we will learn about the call of Moses by God and how Moses is going to be called to save the people of Israel who live in the land of Egypt. And there's some really dramatic events that occur, so you're not going to want to miss that. Turning to our book here, Finding Our Way Through the Bible. We left off on page 123 was the last page, so we're going to work on page 124 through 126, so just 3 pages, and we're going to continue in our work with reading just portions of a verse and getting used to that. And as you think about today's lesson and learning how to use your Bible, think about what Moses was going through. He was a foreigner in a foreign land, and yet God is going to use him in ways he never thought was possible. And he was going to be called to do things that he never thought he could do. And the stories that you're going to see over the next several weeks, I hope will inspire you when you feel a little weak, not sure you have it within you to do what God's calling you to do, that you will realize that God doesn't always call you for your ability. He calls you for your availability. and He will provide you what you need to do the job that He wants you to do. So we hope to see you next week. Have a wonderful time, and God bless.